you went there in regards to a reference to a potential season-ending record. Do you recall your record prediction at the beginning of the season?
9-3.
Okay, you went 9-3.
Yep.
I went 8-4, and I took some hits for that here in regards to the chat that I was being too. That's not being pessimistic because I'm not a USC fan. This was just me making a call. And I certainly was borderline between 9-3 and 8-4. So I'm not overplaying my prediction as being some kind of genius selection because they're going to be hustling to get to 8-4 at this point. 6-6 is the most likely because you got to think they're a decided underdog against Notre Dame, and for them to sweep the other three the way they're playing is unlikely. Nebraska's been, at least this past week, played a really good game in Columbus, and the trip to Seattle's going to be a difficult one. So 7-5, 6-6 looks to be, but just think at the outset of the season after a win against LSU to think that this would have come down to a 6 or 7 win season. Wow.
Yep. Just want to address this point from our Alabama friend here. The defense gives up leads in every game. Not sure if that's true about the offense. Well, I mean, the offense doesn't. It's not the offense's job to protect a lead. It's the offense's job to build the lead or to run out the clock so that the defense doesn't have to play an extra possession at the end of a game where it can give up the lead. If the offense could run out the clock in some of these games, and it's had the chance to, then the defense doesn't go back on the field with the game on the line. And the other thing is that this defense has been banged up. This defense has been shredded by injuries. Like the USC defense, folks, I mean, for those of you who don't follow this program pretty closely or kind of, jumping in from the outside for tonight's show, the USC defense has been hit so much harder than the offense in terms of injuries. Like you do not have most of your first string defense right now. You didn't have it against Rutgers. All right. It's a mash unit right now for the USC defense. The offense has been largely intact. And that point that the offense and specifically the offensive line has not been decimated by injuries this season. So that puts it more on Josh Henson, and it makes it more clear that the offense broadly, if you're just going to compare offense versus defense, the offense is so much more the reason for USC's failures this season than the defense. If the defense had not been shredded by injuries, and we're talking about the opening day starters not doing their job and not holding the fort in these recent losses, totally different conversation. But you haven't had the elite horses. You haven't had Eric Gentry. You haven't had Anthony Lucas. You haven't had Bear Alexander. You haven't had some of these other guys in the secondary as well. This is a banged up defense. It's when one side of the ball is injured and shorthanded, it's the other side of the ball that needs to pick up that banged up unit. The offense has had many chances to do that and has whiffed in every significant 50-50 moment. I think the one exception being the Wisconsin game. Gentry got injured in the Wisconsin game. The offense really did pick him up in the second half. But in these other recent games with a shorthanded defense, the offense didn't pick up the defense. It did not help the defense out when all these injuries mounted. So hopefully that offers some clarity in terms of the offense-defense balance that we're talking about. It's not a full-strength defense that's been giving up leads. It's been a shorthanded defense that's been giving up leads. When we also consider that Maryland gave up 37 to Northwestern, Maryland gave up 48 to Minnesota, USC scored just 28 against Maryland. Come on, that is on the offense. That game was definitely on the offense more than the defense. Miller Moss threw a pick six, so actually, Maryland finished with 29 points. The Maryland offense scored just 22 points. Like the USC offense should have done more than enough. The defense did its job. The offense couldn't finish off that game when given the chance. That's definitely more on the offense, and it really shouldn't be that much of a point of debate.
And just to accentuate that point from a different angle, you have to understand what the program is built on. So we're not talking about an elite program where there is shared responsibility between the offense and the defense and the special teams. We're talking about the offense being the forerunner of this program. The head coach is an offensive-minded guru. That's his calling card. It's a quarterback-centric, wide receiver, weapons-centric offense or team. And it would be like us criticizing if Iowa's defense was giving up late scoring drives to lose games in the last minute of the game over and over and over, and us saying, what's wrong with that Iowa offense? They should be expanding the lead to 2 or 3 touchdowns. No, Iowa's a defensive driven team. Therefore, they shouldn't be giving up touchdown passes with 20 seconds left to be losing games week after week after week. If their defense is walking out onto the field protecting a 4-point lead, well, it's expected that the Iowa defense, because it's a defense-centric program, is going to make those leads stand up, and they're going to win the game.
No question about it. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Adam asks here, what is the factual and evidentiary basis to believe that USC will improve upon this year's performance in the coming year?
So, Adam, I really think, that recruiting is going to tell the tale. Recruiting and transfer portal acquisitions, like USC's starting 22. I mean, this was a point that Tim Prangley has made, and, I did agree with him that the starting 22 had the makings of a good team. But then did you have the depth behind that starting 22? And that's where the question marks really began to emerge. And so on defense, as soon as the depth problems were exposed, the defense had a much smaller margin for error. The offense needed to compensate for that. And the offensive line, again, as I've said many times, was not able to close the door in several different situations when it had the opportunity to do so. So, Adam, in terms of USC improving upon current performance, it has to start with recruiting and portaling, just beefing up the line play. It's so much about the line play because you don't have to have a Caleb Williams type quarterback. Like Miller Moss, if you give Miller Moss an elite offensive line, if you give Miller Moss the best offensive line in the United States, he'll win you 10, 11 ball games. But USC has not had anything close to the best. USC has, on balance, a pretty average offensive line, an offensive line that can play 30 to 35 good minutes a game, but rarely exceeds that total. It certainly can't play a complete game unless the opponent really stinks, such as Rutgers, such as Utah State. So there isn't a whole lot of evidence right now, Adam. You just got to be honest and tell it like it is. We don't do Clay Helton sunshine pumping here at the Voice of College Football. But if the line play talent, especially on the offensive side, can be upgraded and USC can make some significant portal acquisitions, particularly offensive tackle, like if you can get a Bobby Haskins 2022, if you can get that for 2025, a guy who can just lock down a tackle spot. You can rely on him. He's going to be there. Justin Dedich, Brett Nealon, Andrew Voorhees, they were injured for portions of that 2022 season. But because Haskins was there and he was reliable, that line was able to be held together. As long as 2 of the 3, Dedich, Nealon, Voorhees, as long as 2 of the 3 were available, USC was able to play without one of them, but you had Haskins doing his job up front, and the line stayed intact, and the line was able to do enough for Caleb Williams to win the Heisman Trophy and win 11 ball games. So USC is going to need to hit a home run in the portal with an offensive tackle. It's also going to need to do that on defense, but the first priority is offensive tackle. In the portal. If you can get that and you can beef up your offensive line recruiting as a whole, That's how USC can get better. That is the central path to getting better. Like, I'm excited for what Jaden Maiava can do next year, assuming that he gets the keys to the offense. Like, I'm sure that he's learning a lot, you know, and assuming that USC does get to a bowl game, Maiava is going to have the bowl game as his audition for the coming season, much as the Holiday Bowl against Louisville was Miller Moss's audition. And I think there are raw and natural tools with Maiava that can give USC more upside than what we see from Miller Moss, just because Maiava is a dual threat guy. And just being a dual threat, that just naturally opens up more possibilities for what an offense can achieve. It's not a criticism of Miller Moss. He's just a drop back quarterback, okay? He's not a sprinter. He's not Superman. So if USC can surround Maiava with a better offensive line and can become a more physical, deeper, nastier team up front, that is the central path to improvement for USC.